Hey Bisola, can you hear me?
Hey, yep, I can hear you. GM.
Nice to finally hear from you again. Apart from Google Meet. Yeah.
Hey guys, it's nice to have you guys on the space. I think we're waiting for a couple more speakers, right? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Is Marvel joining? Uh, is
Oh,
anyone else
I
from
think I'm
Linky?
rocking. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Wow.
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. All right, cool. Yeah, we got. I said we're waiting for a couple more speakers, right?
Yeah, I think Marvel.
Hey, check out guy. Oh, cool. I think we're getting rocked a little bit, but yeah, we're going to sort that in a minute. Hey, while we're getting the speakers in, I'd like to ask you guys to just like and retweet the space, maybe drop a comment to get people in here. Great, you guys can speak now. You can hear me.
Yep, loud and clear, mate.
Uh, could you say again? I think you're.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think. Oh yeah, better now. Cool, cool.
Awesome.
Let's get the space started. Awesome. We've got all these builders on stage, and I like to give our audience, and people who are listening in after the space to give them a little intro, who you guys are and what you're doing in the space. So, gonna start with Bisola from Chai Super. Just give us a little rundown of what you're trying to achieve in Web3 or what you've been building.
Yeah, GM guys, great to have you here. Yeah, I'm Bazola, one of the co-founders of Super. Uh, yeah, what we're really trying to build um, with Super is this um, seamless financial experience. I would say for consumers based in the global South. Right now, we're focused on Nigeria, looking to expand to other African countries, and then the world eventually. Um, and what we're really building is a seamless kind of on and off ramping experience between Naira and kind of stables, powered by our friends over at Link. And then kind of on the latter half, building an awesome, I would say, earning experience. We really see Super as a conduit for helping Nigerians earn, make money in crypto, and so we're kind of building the second half of our master plan between first on ramping into crypto and now kind of earning with first our bounty board, um, the kind of yield protocols we've integrated, and a bunch more. I think we really see Super as this sort of crypto super app that will really help Nigerians kind of earn, build wealth, that sort of thing. I would say.
That's so cool. It's in the name, right? It's like a super app for Nigerians in the crypto space. I want to give the mic to MG Styles. You're the COO at Link. So you want to tell us a little bit about what you guys are building? And
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me here, guys. So yeah, like you've already mentioned, my name is Marvel. Yeah, shout out to Bisola and our guys at Super doing really awesome stuff. I would say doing super things, but that would just make it a little bit. But yeah, he knows I do that a lot. Yeah, so basically what we are at Link we're building infrastructure for on-chain FX powered by fiat-backed stablecoins and basically enabling settlements on-chain that's with said fiat-backed stablecoins as well as local fiat. And really what we do is to basically enable businesses, Web3 teams, to scale into new markets, right? Just like in the sense of Super right now. Like they mentioned, what they're doing is right now more on the off ramping side from basically allowing like users to off ramp USDC or USDT into NGN. Basically, what the ones that are powering this infrastructure on the back, and then for other currencies as well, such as Brazil, Canada, some European countries, and many more in the pipeline are coming. But yeah, so in this particular one, we're really working with the super. I said the super team, working with super to really facilitate this in Nigeria. Yeah, so yeah, that's a little bit on us on what we're doing.
that's awesome. That's so cool. So um you're helping people to unlock liquidity, for businesses in places where they can't really access crypto. You're making it easier for them to unlock that liquidity for their business. And I think that's really cool. We lost him for a minute, but Tsunamev is on stage now. So yeah, talk to us. What do you do in Web3? What are you building? And yeah, just give us a little intro.
Hey everyone. So he actually got it first time is or the second time is Tsunami Ev. So like my boss, like my boss MG Styles already like laid the footprint on what we do at Link because to give you guys my real name, so my name is Michael. I'm the lead marketer at Link. Link where we're building the application and infrastructure layer for global FX on chain with fiat-backed stablecoins in like various currencies. Like with all the explanations Marvel gave, I think like that's good to go. So basically, what we're trying to just push in layman English is we want to give businesses or business owners the opportunity to scale, and not just in Africa, but in the global for like to have basically global reach and in terms of payments, in terms of storage of funds instead of sending and collect and receiving funds. We want businesses to not worry about payments. We don't want them to worry about prices. We don't want them to worry about rates, but we want to give them the opportunity to grow their revenue and focus on other things apart from payments, because with payments, we want to be the guys to help them know that there's no need for them to worry. So yeah, that's what we're doing at Link, and long may it continue.
Sweet. And I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that stablecoins are becoming like the face of modern commerce, because the way things are going right now, it's like um already crypto is becoming institutionalized, and stablecoins are kind of the closest thing we have to the current traditional system, where something is backed by real fiat. And I think a lot of businesses, a lot of economies are going to be integrating that. And I think it's really cool to be able to give Nigerians access to that level of, economic power. um but again, I think we need to we need to hone in on the topic of this discussion, and it's whether stablecoins are the future. I'm going to lead by saying I'm already partial. I believe stablecoins are the future, but this conversation is to just get a vibe check based on your experiences with stablecoins, especially as Nigerians, to understand if you feel like Cinnamon is laughing, if you feel like stablecoins are the future, if you feel like people are ready for it. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that people face in accessing, crypto from local fiat. Like getting crypto from Naira, getting from going from Naira to USDT, it's a nightmare for so many people. It's very complicated. So let's talk about that. What do you guys think about that whole process as it stands right now?
Yeah, happy to jump in on this. And I think to kind of answer your first question, firstly, stable coins, they are the future. I think when you compare them to traditional ways of moving money today in the fiat system, stable coins they're faster, they're cheaper. So I think objectively speaking, they're superior. Um, and so the question then becomes, how do we, get people participating in that on-chain economy? How do you get them to on ramp from naira to crypto? And from my understanding today, at least in Nigeria, right now, I guess the experience is challenging. I think people use local vendors, people use P2P exchanges, and the experience around that, those two kind of modalities of getting access, stablecoins aren't great. And so for us at Super, the question is, how do you, even if under the hood we're still using fundamentally the same rails to get access to USDC, how do we at least build a better experience for a user, so that they can at least feel that getting access to stable coins is faster, it's cheaper. And so I think for us at Super, the focus is the experience and providing just like a step up function change for users. Really, is how we see that.
Yeah, that's right. It's all about the experience, because people don't really like, to be honest, most users aren't really interested in how something works. They just want to know that it works for them and it works well. So yeah, I think that's very important to consider the experience that users get. Right now it's not where it should be. Yeah, agreed. But I mean, is anybody in the room working in Web3? Anyone here who, do you work in Web3? Do you build in Web3 besides the people on stage? Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously we all work in Web3, but I think it's a common experience for many people, or many Nigerians who work in Web3, to face this difficulty in accessing stable coins. If you're paid in stable coins, for instance, if you want to off ramp to Naira, you don't really have, like, up until recently, you didn't really have the flexibility to just pay in local currency, because you'd have to consider devaluing your crypto. So it's a whole thing, and it shouldn't be that stressful. But basically, um, what do you guys think is the solution? You know, besides the technical stuff, for people who are just interested in how this can work for them, like I said earlier, what do you think is the simplest solution to start addressing this, on a large scale or on a wide scale?
Um, so I want to quickly like jump on this one. Just to get your question, like solution in terms of how like related to global payments and billings in crypto. Like that what you're asking, yeah? Like solutions for a smoother crypto payment experience.
Yes, exactly.
So basically, me, I have two things to say about this particular question, and one being why actually the topic stable coins. Like stable coins are pegged to the value of the fiat coins like USDC, like basically offers price stability, making them more suitable for everyday like transactions. Like I always like there's this reference I saw on LinkedIn. It was weighing it to like a balloon tied on a weight. It prevents it from floating away, basically. So stablecoins is one. At least stablecoins offer stability. So and vendors they know that okay, vendor 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 vendo, 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 vendo,